Hey guys, Sam from the Spawn Room here. Last video in this eSports FAQ little mini series I'm putting together just from random notes I had over the years of doing eSports related stuff. I wanted to bring up two kind of like social perception issues that people have. The first is competitive gaming considered a sport? And the second is, should professional players be able to make a living off esports? Two questions that just kind of pop up every once in a while. When StarCraft was blowing up and people were like talking about stuff like, oh, should esports be in the Olympics or whatever? People were asking questions like this. So I just wanted to give a little bit of insight from my angle, and you can take it or leave it, whatever. So is competitive gaming considered a sport? So first off, this entire question is just it's a social perception. It has no basis on like reality. The universe does not give a shit whether or not you consider esports a sport or not. It's all about your own mind, your past experiences, and whether or not you live in the traditional old school world, like pre-internet world, or you live in the modern world. that's kind of Maybe that's kind of a rude way to put it, but if you live in the more cutting edge world, let's say, that's essentially like the determining factor. You either have this worldview where sports are this traditional physical activity. It's back in the Greek days, we ran around naked and it was all about strength and speed and stuff like that. And there's an argument there, I suppose. But if you live in a more cutting edge, like internet world where things are changing quickly, the world is going into mass chaos because everyone is just opening up and being like, hey, I can be who I want to be because look at all these people online that support who I am. Also, we live in a different world, and to me, esports is like, there's one question you have to ask yourself, or can ask yourself, and it's, what is going to happen in the future? If you think that esports in 20 years from now is going to be like a big deal and it's going to be considered a sport, which I think it will because it's so accessible and it's so much fun, and there are just going to be more people, and there's going to be enough people out there that are like serious and into it, and there's going to be a lot of money in it, it will be a sport. So if that is the answer, why wait to change your mind? If it's going to be a sport in 20 years, just update your worldview right now, because otherwise you're just wasting time. If people, I think there's a thing where people think that if I change my mind about this, I become a different person and I can't undo the damage or something like that. I think that really applies to like religious arguments. Like if I'm Christian right now and I question my religion for a week, then I'm screwed because I'm gonna like fall into darkness or something like people feel like they can't undo the damage. And you can. There's this weird thing that you can do where you can update your worldview on the fly. And you can go, hey, esports is a sport, whatever. And you can just accept that. And after a week, you can go, yeah, maybe esports isn't a sport. You can just undo it. Like, why don't people do that more often? It's the same thing. Like, I mean, it's kind of a trick on religious people, but if you can just not be religious for a week and try and like be like, hey, what if God doesn't exist for like a week? And then you could technically go back, although I don't think you probably would if you gave it a real shot, because you'll be like, oh, okay, I get what people are talking about. But the same goes for stuff like this, social issues. If you can just let go and be like, esports is a sport, you'll realize that doesn't actually affect my life that much, and it makes me more open-minded, and I can enjoy something that I previously couldn't enjoy to the fullest degree. So yeah, ultimately it is a social perception issue. Now, of course, it does matter in terms of funding. If only a really, really small group of people thinks it's a sport, then from the social norm level, it's not a sport and it won't receive funding and it won't be treated the same way. But that ultimately changes on an individual level. So if you consider it a sport and then you convince your friends to consider it a sport, that will eventually spread like wildfire, and people will be like, yeah, you know what? This is like it's competition. People are competing for something. It is strenuous at a psychological level and at a physical level to some degree. Like this fits all the sort of same sort of like requirements that traditional sports have. It's just less physical. And in fact, like from my perspective, it's actually like smarter. I mean, like you're basically like playing chess, but in a more exciting way, which is pretty advanced, I would think. But whatever. Yeah, I mean, in terms of funding and stuff, it needs to become like a sport in terms of social norms, but that changes at an individual level. So update your worldview, or what is that? Update your gray matter, because one day it may matter. So just do that, and you will enjoy it more. Should professional players be able to make a living off esports? I doubt people are asking this question anymore because people are just making a living off esports regardless of what you think about that. But I have a feeling people are going to ask that question in the future again, once esports has like maybe a second growth spurt, post SE2, post League of Legends. And I think that ultimately like comes from this idea where people, they look at video games and go, anyone can do that. They're just playing games. I could do that. What's stopping me from streaming and making thousands of dollars, or going to, I could play a game for a while and be super good at it. I'm super good at, Battlefield or Call of Duty or something. Like, what? False. You can't be that good, and you can't be that successful unless you're willing to sacrifice what they sacrificed. Like, I think people misconstrue the scope, the actual work that goes into doing that sort of stuff. That pro player that you think that you could probably compete with, you can't compete with them. Trust me. You are going to get into a server. I don't care if you spend every waking day for the next year playing, they're most likely still going to win. They have spent thousands, tens of thousands of hours playing that game, not just playing that game, becoming a pro, which is a separate thing. If you just play a game for 10,000 hours, you will not be a professional. Maybe you'll be a professional if you're lucky, but a professional is different than someone who just plays for 10,000 hours. I think that is a common misconception. The person who becomes a pro, they want to become a pro. So they're looking for every opportunity to learn, which is different than just playing a game. They're not looking to just enjoy a game for 10,000 hours. They're spending that 10,000 hours like going, I suck at this tiny minutia and I am going to change it. Whereas you would just be like, yeah, I probably don't need to worry about that. So when you say that they're just playing games, they're really not. It is just like everything else. There are so many niche fields and interests in this world where you're like, that's a thing? Yes, it's a thing, because there is an unbelievable amount of depth and complexity once you get beyond the surface level. So should professional players be able to make a living off esports? Absolutely, because they're doing something niche and complicated with depth, and it takes a lot of time and effort, and they should be compensated for that time and effort. And they will be. I mean, ultimately, the market is the determining factor. People are going to continue to love esports. It's going to continue to grow. There's going to be more players. Players are going to get better, and money will ultimately speak. So it doesn't really matter, but just if you're looking for some perspective on that question. And that's what I want to talk about. Hopefully I got that across all right. And thanks for listening as always. Please consider subbing and all that sort of stuff. And I'll see you next time.